When I picked up the envelope, something inside me broke. The thin paper seemed to carry the weight of countless memories. It was cream-colored, with embossed edges, a delicate wedding invitation. But sadly, it didn't say Mom or any words of affection. Just my name, Mara. Cold, distant, familiar yet foreign. What I felt at that moment wasn't anger. It was more emptiness. Because this wasn't just a wedding invitation. It felt like a document that came after 30 years of silence. I wasn't expecting love to pour out of it, but maybe a personal note, a brief handwritten message, perhaps a small, "I hope you come?" Maybe. But there was nothing. My daughter was getting married, Lena, my only child. The last time I saw her, she was 16. Now, at 46, she was getting married, and I, as her mother, seemed to have been added at the bottom of the guest list out of formality. The chair I sat in felt like a tombstone. My coffee had gone cold at the end of the table, and my fingers were caressing the edge of the envelope. Lena's wedding was in 8 weeks. According to the details on the envelope, the venue was a luxurious vineyard. Elegant, distant, expensive. But for me, this wedding was just a farewell. Because 3 months ago, words from a doctor had told me that my time was running out. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 6 months, maybe less. The doctor talked about treatments. But his eyes were telling me the truth. I accepted it. I was at the final stretch of my life, and fate had brought me this wedding, this invitation. Was it a gift from God? Or just one last game life was playing on me? I didn't know. But the one thing I knew was I had to go. I had to see her. Just once more. Lena's separation from my life hadn't been my choice, but it had been told differently. Her father Mark had slowly erased me from her life over the years. He was a smooth talker, impressive, respectable. People listened to him. I, however, was just a tired woman after a few years of marriage. When we divorced, Lena was small. But Mark was a master at keeping her away from me. "Your mother abandoned you," he said. "She didn't want you." Yet when she was born, I fought alone. Because Mark hadn't even wanted the pregnancy. "You'll ruin my career," he'd said to me. And I was punished for choosing to give birth. I could never tell Lena these things. Because Mark won the legal battles. With money, connections, and lies. The letters I sent came back. When I called, no one answered. Distance, moves, name changes came between us. Then years, then silence. And now, years later, I was being called back with a wedding invitation. Why? My instincts answered, money. The next day, I dialed the number on the envelope. A woman's voice answered. It felt like an echo from the past, ripping through time. "Yes? Lena?" My voice was shaking. I'm your mother." There was a long silence. Then her voice came, clear but cold. "So, the invitation reached you?" "Yes, I would like to come." After a brief pause, an unexpected sentence was heard. "Let's meet. We need to talk about some things regarding the wedding." We chose a neutral place to meet. A quiet, simple cafe. I had arrived 20 minutes early and sat at the corner table. My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. I looked at the passing faces. And then Lena walked in through the door. At first, I didn't recognize her. She was tall, walking straight, with sharp lines on her face. Her eyes still had the same look as when she was a child, but her gaze had completely changed. "Mara," she said, nodding. Not Mom, not hello, just my name. "You look beautiful," I said, and she really did. Without thanking me, she ordered her coffee. We sat in silence. Small talk couldn't be made, so she got straight to the point. "My dad is going through a tough time, financially. The wedding is costing more than we expected." We made eye contact. That's when I fully understood why I was invited. It wasn't because she remembered me. They needed money for the wedding. Even though my throat tightened, my voice came out clear. "I'll help." Her eyes widened. She was shocked, but quickly hid it. "The venue, the food, the flowers, the wedding dress, whatever is needed, I'll cover it." As I said those words, I ran the numbers in my head. My retirement savings, the small amount I kept aside, since I wouldn't have another life, This was the only final kindness I could leave for Lena. She sighed. "Okay," she said. Then she took out the wedding plans from her bag. Venue options, price lists, service details. We sat like two strangers, planning a wedding as if it were a business deal. There was no past in our conversation, nor any hope for the future. Just a cold transaction. But a voice inside me told me, this was my last chance, and if I could be in the same room as her, that would be enough. After that strange meeting at the cafe, I didn't get a thank you message or a call from Lena, but every day, her presence made itself felt with the planning lists that landed in my inbox. Not once during our conversation had she asked about my health. She never brought up why we hadn't seen each other for so many years. But there was one thing I didn't want from her: the truth. She didn't have time for that anymore. She'd handed over all the details to me. The venue, catering, music, flowers, decorations. I made all the decisions, and I just communicated the results to Lena. She would mostly respond with a short, "Okay." A few times, I suggested we visit the venue together, but she said, "James and I will look at it. Just make the reservation." "You," she said, not "Mom, just someone," as if I were just a wedding planner. But I had become the silent architect in her life, in the background yet involved in every detail. I picked 3 venues. All were elegant and classy, but one took me back to the past. It was just below a hill where Lena and I had gone for a picnic when she was 7. That day, she was wearing a yellow dress. She had stuffed acorns in her pockets, so many that her pockets were bulging, and the bottom of her dress hung loose. With every step, an acorn would fall. I couldn't forget that day. When I suggested the venue to Lena, I didn't mention that memory. I just sent the photos. Her reply was short. "This one." The next day, I signed the contracts. When the venue staff said, "You must be family," I just smiled. "I've known her all her life," I said. Half truth, but spoken with full love. The wedding dress fitting, tastings, music choices. I wasn't there for any of it. But I made sure every detail had something to do with her childhood, her loves, her habits. For instance, there were no strawberries on the menu. Because when Lena was a child, she hated eating strawberries in winter. "They taste like water," she'd say. So I made sure the menu was made up of only seasonal fruits. Chef Anton looked at me with surprise. "Moms usually participate in this process," he said. "She's very busy," I replied. It wasn't a lie. What could be busier than me for her? When I went to the florist, she mentioned bracelets made for mothers and daughters. I changed the subject. When the invitation designer asked, "Will your name be included?" I showed him the template in front of me. "It's a wedding hosted by the father's side. Let it stay as it is," I said. My name wasn't anywhere, yet I was involved in everything, every decision, every payment receipt, every signature, but I was invisible. I was the architect of the wedding, but my name hadn't even been attached in the corner. The only phone call from Lena was for hair and makeup arrangements. "There are 5 bridesmaids. They need to come early to get ready at the venue," she said. "Okay," I replied. "Include James's mom and Melissa." I fell silent. "She's my dad's partner," she added. Melissa, younger than Lena, Mark's girlfriend for the last 5 years, the woman who caught attention with her looks, posted perfect couple pictures on social media, and was there for every one of Lena's birthdays. "I don't need any preparation," Lena said. No one had asked for anything. "Whatever you want," I replied. At that moment, it wasn't the feeling of motherhood speaking. It was just the desire to exist. Being ignored had become my new normal. That night, I thought for hours. The same question kept running through my mind. Should I speak the truth? The things Mark had said to me, "This child will ruin everything. My job, my career, my life. Either you get an abortion, or you'll end up alone." I had chosen to be alone. And now, even death was offering me a lonely farewell. The wedding rehearsal was held at a luxurious restaurant chosen by Mark. I paid for it, but they seated me at the back of the table. While Lena and Mark spoke on stage, I just watched from a distance. "We designed every detail of this beautiful day together," Mark said proudly. At that moment, I lowered my eyes. It wasn't anger, but a deep exhaustion that washed over me. This wasn't my wedding. This was the wedding of a girl without a mother. and I was just a shadow. That night, when I returned to my hotel room, I took out the thick envelope from my bag. I turned the pages and went back to the beginning, and I started writing. All the words I had kept hidden for 3 years, the words I had never spoken, poured into one letter. The truth, the war that started with Mark's betrayal and ended in courtrooms. The pain of a silent woman, a mother that could never scream but couldn't stop the pain either. And then I put the letter in the envelope. It didn't close. Because I hadn't made up my mind. Would I speak the truth that day? Or would I stay silent again and choose to disappear in the shadow that Lena had drawn for me? I woke up before the alarm went off. The first thing I looked at when I opened my eyes was the letter that had been sitting by my bedside all night. It was written in my handwriting, but the letters seemed to echo a trembling voice. Inside, there was the weight of 30 years. Silence, fear, loneliness. And most importantly, the truths Lena had never heard. My hands were shaking as I put the letter in my bag. Today was the wedding day. Perhaps the happiest day of Lena's life, or maybe the most turbulent. But for me, perhaps it was a goodbye. Maybe it was the last time I would wake up to a morning. Maybe today, my daughter would see me for the last time. Would she really see me? I couldn't know. I looked at myself in the hotel mirror for a long time. I tried to cover up the marks of chemotherapy with foundation. Under my eyes, the pale spots on my cheeks. I'm not sure how well I succeeded, but I did my best. I straightened my hair and gathered it at the back. I wore an elegant, dark blue dress. It wasn't flashy, but it was respectful. When I arrived at the wedding venue, it was only 8 in the morning. The sunrise was casting golden light over the vineyards. The staff was in a flurry of preparations. Flowers were being arranged, tablecloths ironed, servers were doing their last rehearsals. Everything was just as it should be. Well, just as I had planned. The venue coordinator came over to me. She was holding a small box. A special bracelet for the mother. Would you like to see it? For a moment, I almost couldn't breathe. In that moment, I just wanted to say, "No, I'm not a mother." But I didn't. "Yes," I said. When she opened the box, my eyes filled with tears. It was an elegant bracelet with white roses and blue forget-me-nots. I had chosen it, knowing full well I wouldn't wear it. "It's beautiful," I said quietly, and handed the box back to her. "The bride's side will be here soon," the coordinator said. I turned back to the tables. Last-minute checks, final adjustments. Everything had to look perfect. Everything had to be flawless. Lena's day couldn't be overshadowed. Not yet. At one point, I glanced through the open door into the bride's room. Lena was standing in front of the mirror. Her wedding dress on, her hair decorated with pearl pins, her face glowing. She was truly beautiful. I held my breath. I wanted to just look at her. Inside, 100 memories from the past flashed by. Her first steps, the mornings she went to school, the night she lost her tooth, all of it. But in that moment, a bridesmaid closed the door. And I was alone again. It was as if a life was unfolding behind the glass, a scene I wasn't even allowed to watch. At 1:30 p.m., a staff member came to me. "Are you from the bride's side or the groom's?" he asked. The question was so strange. My answer caught in my throat. "Bride," I finally said. "I'm her mother." His eyes widened. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." "It's okay," I said. He took me and led me to the ceremony area. But not to the front row, not to the second row. He directed me to a chair at the back, in the corner. "It was your father's request," he said quietly. Of course it was. What else would I expect from Mark? The ceremony started. Music played. Guests took their seats. Then Mark came up on stage, with Lena by his side. He was walking proudly, with my daughter on his arm. People stood and applauded them. Lena was smiling. In that moment, I was just a spectator. Neither of us made eye contact, nor did she notice me. Maybe she did, and just chose not to look. The vows were exchanged. Applause, kisses, signatures. Then we moved to the reception area. The whole hall was filled with flowers. On the tables, there were quotes from Lena's favorite childhood books, blue and silver tablecloths that matched her tastes. I had chosen all of them. But my name wasn't on any of them. At the entrance, I checked the seating arrangement on the board. Mark, Lena, James, and Don. Melissa, in the front, at the honor table. Alongside them, James's family. My name was at table 12, in the back corner, among strangers. But the real shock came when I reached my table. There, beside Melissa, was a small decorated stool. A cat was sitting on it. It was wearing a bow tie, and there was a crystal food bowl in front of it. There was a place for the cat. But not for me. My breath caught. I stood up from the table. I walked away under the pretense of needing to go to the bathroom. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at myself. The fragility inside me settled in my throat. And then Lena stepped through the door. When she saw me, she paused for a moment. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is perfect," I said, trying to smile. "You look really great. The reception is wonderful." With a brief thank you, she nodded her head. "Melissa insisted her cat Whiskers had to sit with them," she said, looking a bit embarrassed. I forced myself to smile. "It looks very elegant," I said. "Just like the groom." There was a brief silence. Then Lena, looking away, said, "This arrangement is better for everyone." Then she added, "You've always known how to stay in the background." That sentence, "You've always known how to stay in the background." In that moment, all the years, all the letters, all the efforts came crashing down at once. I hadn't stayed in the background. I had been left out, and I couldn't carry any more. I reached for the letter in my bag. I wasn't going to stay silent today. The lights of the wedding hall competed with the evening sun spilling through the vineyards. The tablecloths were smooth, napkins folded, candles had begun to burn. Everything looked like a fairy tale. But I wasn't in any page of that fairy tale. I was just a wordless figure, a faint shadow, and I didn't want to stay in that shadow anymore. I left the bathroom and blended into the crowd. Everyone seemed happy. Laughter echoed. Champagne glasses were clinking. No one noticed a mother, eyes full of tears, walking alone in the back. All eyes were on the bride and groom. Lena might have seen me if she turned her head, but she didn't. Maybe she didn't want to. At that moment, I made up my mind. The letter in my pocket was no longer a burden. It would be a key to unlock the truth. With quick but controlled steps, I found the venue coordinator. She was walking around with a clipboard, checking tables. "Lisa," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I need to leave an envelope at the bride's table. It's very important." The woman hesitated for a moment, then nodded professionally. "Of course. Would you like me to put your name on it?" "No need," I said. "She'll recognize it." I handed her the envelope. In the dim light from the blue candles, I watched her walk away. She nodded as she went. As she approached the table where Lena was sitting, my pulse quickened. Lisa placed the envelope next to Lena's plate. Right next to it, the cat, eating from its crystal bowl, was still there. How ironic. A cat was closer to Lena's life than I was. Lisa turned around and went back to her duties. I sat down on a chair near the dessert table, away from the crowd, but close enough to observe everything. And I started to wait. Minutes passed. Champagne was passed around, guests were talking, laughter filled the air. Then something happened. Lena noticed the envelope. For a moment she turned her head, then carefully picked it up. Her fingers traced the edge of the paper, as if she were holding something she had never seen before. A mother's handwriting, words carrying the silence of years. She opened the envelope. The music was still playing, but when she stopped, the world seemed to go silent for me. As Lena's eyes moved down the letter, her face started to change. Her brows furrowed, her lips parted, one hand went to her chest. Then there was silence at the table. James reached out to touch her, but Lena pulled her hand away. She whispered something to him, and James looked around, his face full of concern. Melissa tried to ask something, but Lena didn't speak to her either. Then Lena stood up, and she walked toward the microphone. The entire hall fell silent. There was a strange determination on her face. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her voice didn't tremble. She took the microphone in her hand. At a wedding, it's unexpected for the bride to speak, but she was going to speak. and every word would fall like a rock in the middle of the hall. "Dear guests," she said. As her voice came through the microphone, everyone turned to her. "I need to read something to you tonight, because some truths should be heard before it's too late." She lifted the letter in her hand. The crowd started to whisper. Mark straightened in his chair, Melissa hugged the cat. James's face turned pale. Lena began to read. "Dear Lena, I'm leaving this letter at your wedding because I want to tell you the truth before it overshadows your day. Maybe it's too late to say these words, but I still want to try. I never turned my back on you. Yes, your father and I separated. But the real separation wasn't made by me, it was by him. When I got pregnant, your father didn't want this child. He forced me to make a choice, but I chose you, and I was punished for that choice. I lost in court because his connections were powerful. I only fought with the letters I wrote, and those letters never reached you. The hall was completely quiet. Not even the clink of silverware could be heard. For years, I searched for you. I sent letters, on birthdays, holidays, every occasion. But all I got back was silence. Then came the illness. Stage 4 cancer. And I said, maybe this wedding is my last chance to see you. So I took care of everything. The venue, the flowers, the dress. All of it was out of love for you. And because I loved you, I wanted to tell you the truth one last time." Lena's voice cracked. Her eyes were filled with tears. But she kept reading. "Your father loved you, I have no doubt about that, but he twisted the truth to separate me from you. Maybe you can't forgive me. Maybe it's still too late. But this time, I didn't want to go silently. I love you, and I always have." When she put down the microphone, the room was silent. Everyone was looking at Lena. Mark stood up. "Lena, please," he said. But Lena fixed her gaze on him. "Is this true?" she said loudly. "Did you want me to leave him when I was pregnant?" Mark couldn't answer. "For years you told me my mother didn't want us. But she's here, and the place you gave to the cat, it wasn't given to her." Suddenly the sound of glass breaking echoed. Melissa's champagne glass had crashed to the floor. At that moment, the wedding was over. "Get out!" Lena shouted. "This wedding is over here." How can a human heart tremble and lighten at the same time? I don't know. But that evening, while I sat on the stone bench and Lena's voice echoed through the speakers, that very contradiction was within me. My heart was pounding, my knees were shaking. If a mother's greatest fear is losing her child's love, then her greatest hope is to one day win that love back. I had buried that hope years ago. But now, I was hearing her voice. She was shouting the truth. I was hearing my words, my heart, the letter I had written with my own hands, coming from her lips. The wedding hall had emptied, guests had whispered their goodbyes, the music had stopped, and the lights had dimmed. Melissa hurriedly walked away, carrying the cat box. Mark's voice echoed off the walls, but it was lost in Lena's silence. At the end of everything, I was still there. On the stone bench, by the vineyards, listening to the rustling of the leaves. Perhaps for the last time. And then I heard the sound of footsteps, then a voice, soft, hesitant, but that voice was enough to get me to my feet. "Mom!" When I turned my head, I saw Lena. She was still wearing her wedding dress. The veil was gone. Her makeup was smudged. Her hair was messy. But her eyes, for the first time, they met mine. There was no anger, not even reproach. Just a child, looking at her mother, as if after all these years. "Lena," I said, "I'm really sorry. I never wanted it to be this way." Her eyes filled with tears. She sat beside me, silently, her wedding dress spread out on the stone bench, as if it belonged there. "When I was reading the letter you left," she said in a hushed voice, "it felt like my heart started beating again with every word. Suddenly I found myself in a life I didn't know, in a completely different past." She lowered her head. "For years I was angry at you. I ignored you. I silenced you, because I always listened to what he said, and I believed him." "I know," I said, "because you were a child. And he convinced you." "But I'm not a child anymore," she said, her eyes full of emotion. "I want to see the truth, you, myself." We sat in silence for a while. The wind blew the leaves. In the distance, the wedding decorations were being packed away. A staff member was shaking out a tablecloth, picking up the fallen flowers. The wedding was long over. But our story was just beginning. Is the cancer real? She asked suddenly. I looked into her eyes. Yes, I said. How much time? 3 months. Maybe less. Her lips trembled. She looked away, but then she lifted her chin. I spent years hating you. When you were there. Quietly. Never giving up. I could only nod. The writing on that envelope. Every word. I never knew I had such love. She slowly took my hand. That hand made me feel like I belonged, for the first time in a lifetime. We can't bring the years back, I said. I know. But we can spend these 3 months together. She nodded. I want you to tell me everything. What kind of person you were, what you went through. What made you laugh the most? What made you cry the most? Tell me about the day you gave birth to me. I smiled. I'd love to do that. Then she gently rested her head on my shoulder. Mom, she said once more, this time more firmly. I grew up without you, but I always wondered about you. I just couldn't even admit it to myself. I missed you too, I said. I wrote to you every birthday, even though every card came back to me. When I found them, I didn't read them, she said. I asked Dad, and he said, she's obsessed. Forget it. So I threw them away. But today I need those words. Our eyes turned to the vineyards in the distance. The sun was setting. Maybe time was short, but the only real thing was this. We weren't going to stay silent anymore. What do we do now? Lena asked. We have very little time, I said. Isn't that enough? It is. Then she stood up. Let's go. Stay with me tonight. I looked at her in surprise. Isn't it too soon? No, I said, smiling. After 30 years, nothing is too soon. In that moment, for the first time, she felt like a bride, walking with her mother. And for the first time, I walked as a real mother. Let me know if you need any changes. Sometimes time moves slowly, like mud, and sometimes it rushes by, like water. Our 3 months were like an hourglass slipping through our fingers. The first weeks were like a bridge we built with words. Each morning, a new page would open, and each evening, another wound would close. Lena was now calling me, Mom. In the beginning, the word felt hesitant. But over time, it rolled off her tongue. She got used to it. It settled in. And me, I was reborn every time I heard it. She took me into her home, her heart, her life. We had coffee together every morning. I discovered that she still loved the same biscuits she used to when she was a child. She still used the same soap scent. She used to sleep with a nightlight as a child, and still didn't like the dark. Countless little details that I didn't know, but that were still mine. And countless memories I had of her, but that she didn't know. Every day, as she asked me about my past, I shared our past with her. How I cried the first time I held her in my arms, that her first word was light, how she would hold my fingers when she was scared, and how one morning those tiny fingers were missing from my hand. Could we get it back? She asked one night. The past? No, I said. But whatever we plant for the future, it will grow. Our future is very short, she said. Still enough. The days in the hospital began. Chemotherapy was working less, but it was wearing me out more. But she was by my side. She held my hand every time. When my veins swelled, she would turn her face away, but she never let go. For the first time, I rested my head on her shoulder. And for the first time, I said, I'm scared. I've got you, she said. I won't let you go. But the time came to leave. One morning, while having breakfast in Lena's kitchen, the knife slipped from my hand. My vision blurred. She screamed in panic, called the ambulance. She never let go of my hand as we ran through the hospital corridors. But the doctor's eyes told me everything. That night, I faced her. I don't have much time left, I said, but there's time for you. For the truth. No more hiding it from anyone. Your life is just beginning, Lena. She cried, burying her face in my chest. It burns, learning this so late, she said, but learning it was enough for me, I said. We spent our last days at home, looking out the window, sometimes just listening to music. We no longer spoke about the past. We only lived in the present. When I took the oxygen mask off my face and looked at her for the last time, motherhood was raising you, Lena, but the greatest miracle was being able to grow with you, I said. That night, I said goodbye in my sleep. When my eyes closed, Lena was by my bedside. My hand was in hers. Just like the first time I held her tiny fingers. At my funeral, she wore a white dress, not black, because she said, "With you, I didn't learn the darkness, I learned the light." Then what she did next, she never told anyone. But I know one thing. She had a bench placed next to my grave, and on it she had an inscription engraved. Mom, never left, just loved from the background. Sometimes life doesn't give a second chance, but a mother's heart can love beyond all possibilities, beyond possibilities themselves. Mine did. And Lena finally saw that. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. With every new story, we heal together, we grow stronger together. Share your thoughts with us, because every voice can light the way for someone else's journey.